trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
We came, we saw, we died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee, Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking out. Really? Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
It's not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday. And if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only 3 things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, welcome to the nail-biting conclusion of the Polyticks show. I appreciate you for jumping on with me, and there is a lot to go over today. So let me start with my thumbnail and kind of the thesis of what I want to talk about. Let me move my... So this past week, there has been an interesting dynamic occurring. And that dynamic started, I mean, it's been going on for a long time with everybody. But Ian Carroll's appearance on Joe Rogan really brought it to the surface for me. And let me explain to you why.
Yo, we here now, stupid.
I am so glad you are here.
So a lot of people will call anyone and everything an op, or you're a Mossad agent, you're this and that. And with Ian Carroll, I saw a lot of people doing this off the bat, and I kind of thought, maybe he cut his hair, he did all this stuff. Does he have an agency or something? I don't know. But what I do know is there's no legitimate proof that the guy is a secret op. And what I think is going on, what I believe is going on, is this is a good way to break up any chance at the current administration actually changing anything. And whether you voted for Trump or not, whether you're on the left or on the right, the goal is fomenting real change. Okay? And I don't care at this point, the idea that, the left or the right even exist is kind of a joke. And you've probably seen they're trying to make Bernie Sanders a thing again right now, the Democrats, because they have nothing else to offer. And it's hilarious to see Bernie's drawing these major crowds of who is bringing those crowds. That's not organic. You know what I mean? Bernie's original movement was organic, and that is not, clearly. There's something going on there. Maybe the Democrats, through their messaging machine, have done a good enough job to harness dumb liberals into supporting Bernie now, who hated him, 8 years ago, or what was it, 4 years ago, and 4 years ago, when he was a threat to the, Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. But now all of a sudden the Democrats have woken up and let's put Bernie out there. Yeah, because they have nothing left. And there is actually hope with the current administration that things will change, even on the issue that y'all are fucking losing your minds over. And you know what issue I'm talking about? It's in the Middle East. It's our number one welfare queen. And I'm going to show you, I brought proofs, and we're going to end the show today with just some commentary from one of the greats, Max Blumenthal. But there's a lot to go through. So rather than continue running my mouth, let's get into some clips. Now, I want to start here with Andrew Schultz and Joe Rogan, because, of course, Rogan is an op who, is working for whatever you need. But Andrew Schultz here, he brings some great points to the table. And I think he's kind of the everyman, or the average person who does not engage in politics like I do, like you probably do if you're watching this show. But listen to some of the stuff he says, and let's talk about it.
It's top down on the left. And I'm not trying to just bag on the left. I don't care really about that. I don't even care about the politics. I care more about where the cultural liquidity is. And it's you can't talk down to people. There's this Ivy League pretentiousness in the Democratic Party, I feel, where they're we know better, and just you must be stupid if you don't agree with us. And it's all right, well, I'm stupid. I'm dumb. Yeah. I'm dumb then. So why doesn't somebody meet me where I'm stupid and start at least making me feel like I'm not an asshole for the way that.
Yeah. So I think he brings a great point to the table there that kind of describes the nature of the modern Democratic Party. Let's keep
that
listening.
for my, I guess you could say, political leanings now. Yeah, I feel like they need to meet, and it's a very simple thing. Make it a class issue, and I think they win. And
listen to
say what
that.
you want.
So he said, make it a class issue, and I think they'll win. Now, this is a guy who will be smeared by the left, the people that think fucking, Joe Rogan is a right-wing Nazi, as one of those people. Oh, he's a MAGA. But listen to what he just said. He's making the same argument that a lot of the real legitimate people in left political circles have been making for a long time. This isn't a partisan issue. It's a class issue. Christian Smalls was able to form a successful Amazon union by reaching out to people on class-based issues and not going, oh, you don't think girls can have dicks? Well, fuck you. You're out, bro.
Want about America, but I think it's better if we have two people running for president that we're stoked about, and it's a really hard decision.
Oh yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah, that's not what we had. We had one group of people that legitimately wanted to change things, and we're going to see what happens if they do. But you're seeing weird.
See, that's a very pragmatic take on the election too, because that's how I viewed it. And I told some of my relatives this, who are really upset pro-Kamala people. I said, look, to me, this election breaks down to a very simple premise. Do you want things to continue the way they have been going the last 4 years, or do you want something different? And I think a lot of people, despite the propaganda around Trump, made that choice for that reason. And so I think Joe Rogan really kind of nails that right there.
Stuff today that you never see before,
Like
which
what?
is like a real adjustment to the age of the internet. One of the things you're seeing is, I don't know if you saw the 22 different Congress people who were all saying the exact same line with the word shit in it.
What was the line?
So it's like, it's this speech. They're reading it verbatim.
Yeah.
They're all reading it and doing it to a microphone as if it's a rant. But they're all.
I wish I had clipped the Stephen A. Smith thing where he's talking about To the View, and you've probably seen it, but just to paraphrase it real quick. Stephen A. Smith was on The View, and he was saying how basically the reason the Democrats and their followers right now are saying the stuff they're saying is because they're trying to tell themselves that they can keep doing what they've always been doing, or what they've been doing for the last 8 years, 10, 16 years, whatever, since Obama. And they can't do that. And the election just proved that, but they're doubling down on that one more time with this kind of line. And I think it's proof what we have known about that party for a long time, that it's like the guy in my intro said, it's just a empty shell filled with donor money at this point. It's not, and the Republican Party, to be honest, was the same thing. But I think under the Obama, there was a realignment under Obama that a lot of people didn't really pay attention to. But I felt it and saw it because I follow politics. But you saw, and it's so clear now, because Dick Cheney supported Kamala Harris. John Bolton is out here freaking out about Trump. And it made me so proud that Trump won the election, because to me, what that said was that Americans are not stupid. They see through that. You can say, oh, it's because they're racist. It's because it's white people, whatever. No, I think Americans are genuinely smarter than they get credit for. And they saw through the nonsense. And we'll revisit that point later. But
doing from the same script, and the shit ain't right.
So this is
the shit ain't right is the beginning of it. When in the history of the United States
has a politician
said shit,
yeah.
And not just one, but 22 of them in tape record. Can you pull it up just so we can see it?
So the point he's going to make is they see how Trump is winning by being kind of just authentically Trump, and they're trying to copy that. They're like, oh, okay, we need to appeal to people who say shit more. So stupid. Again, they're doubling down on the nonsense.
When you see them all together, it's just like they have it on screens as tiles, and they're all saying the same words. They all have their own little flair they put on it.
Yeah.
Look at this. Put your headphones on. This is fucking bananas.
Terrible. It's hard to listen.
It's okay. You won't be able. You can't really tell. It's like a crowd. But when they had three of them, when it was the first three, it was Chuck Schumer and someone else.
Yeah.
They're saying the exact. Oh, Elizabeth Warren and someone else.
Yeah.
They're saying the exact same words.
Yeah.
In the exact same subject, in the exact same order. You guys are all reading off a script, and you're trying by putting the word shit in there to be authentic.
Well,
shit ain't right.
To be specifically authentic. They're like, we need to speak to working class people, to the kids.
Yeah.
And it is kind of like bigoted in a weird way, where like, it feels like they're almost in a think tank, like, hey, listen, these poor dummies, they like it when you curse.
Yeah.
So if you use a few curse words in your speech, they're going to really relate to you.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we actually need somebody disruptive. We need somebody on the left that might speak like that, but authentically speaks like that, and is willing to disrupt even what's happening on the left. Because if you look at like what happened with the Trump and the movement, like he disrupted the right. The right looks very different now than it did.
And so they're trying to paint, if you notice, they're trying to paint John Fetterman as that guy because he's pro that certain vassal state in the Middle East. And he kind of speaks to most of the other Democratic issues, but he seems like a working class guy who wears shorts and hoodies to Congress. So you can really tell these. Listen, I used to work in marketing and advertising, so I know these people. And when the Obama era began, I was in the midst of it, and the real money started flowing into digital advertising. And then when Trump won with it in 2016, it got even worse. So there is literally, the deep state or the consulting class or, permanent Washington, whatever you want to say, they hire these ad agencies and their entire strategy is marketing. And you can see it in everything they do. It's focus grouped marketing. Everything goes through committee. Everything gets, filtered through some ad agency that they spend outrageous sums of money on, who just collects it and, shits out this complete garbage that they then go out into the public with. And anyway, let Schultz finish here because he's nailing it.
5-10 years ago, right?
Definitely.
So I want like
a MAGA Democrat.
Yeah, like for real. Like, and what is that? Like, what do we at our baseline want? Right? We like abundance. Tell me how great America is going to be in your version of it.
You want Bill Clinton?
Talk that shit. Like, come out talking shit. Bernie was talking shit, and I want you to come out. And if Trump can say we're going to take Greenland, there can be some den that goes,
sorry. So hold on, let me finish that.
$1 eggs. And straight up says we're going to subsidize
how would you do that? You
subsidize it. Subsidize corn. You subsidize dairy. You subsidize everything. Like, why can we not subsidize it? But say something that's actually
again. First point I will make here is he's so right about the consulting class and the moneyed interest telling people they were stupid. But also listen to this. This is a guy who'd be called MAGA or right wing, and here he comes with a solution for the Democrats. He's basically telling them to be their authentic selves. Tell people what you're going to do to lower the price of eggs. Tell people what you're going to do that's going to affect their lives. They're not going to do that because they've been running against Trump for so long. That's all they have. They haven't done anything that they can tout. And they don't have any plans to fix anything. They just want to keep taking money from big companies that they've been taking it from. And listen, I'm not arguing the Republicans are any better, but I think it's interesting the way that things are positioned now, and this is why the title of this on the card was "Everyone on the Internet is an Op," because to me, that's the new trickery that they're trying to use, because there are people on the internet like Rogan and Ian Carroll and Andrew Schultz here who are actually speaking truth, and they want us to fight with each other and go, no, that guy's a secret op from the Mossad or whatever you need to hate these people. And my take is this. Let's deal in reality rather than, smear tactics and this is a real conspiracy theory. Like, what is the evidence that you have for this? There isn't any. And I'm going to keep going here, but let me let Andrew finish here because he's about to wrap up.
Impact people. Now, Trump's not going to take Greenland. So maybe you don't get the $1 eggs, but you get this messaging across that you're actually trying to help people. And you're going to have to deal with those lobbies that are bankrolling you. And that might piss them the fuck off. But that's the disruption we need for us to trust you.
You know what they really should do?
What's that?
They really should have a strategic plan. If we're spending $350 billion went to Ukraine. What was the number? What are they saying it was? I don't know what the number is. Some insane. Let's just be conservative and say 200 billion. Imagine if we spent $200 billion in the United States in all of the crime-ridden cities of the country, just completely overhauling them.
All right. So here's my concern about that.
So again, this is stuff that the Democrats should be saying, and you're getting it from a right-wing MAGA, pro-Trump, anti-freedom, Nazi-supporting guy like Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz. And so this entire messaging that's kind of appeared in the era of Trump, again, I think Mike Benz said it about how he's like, if Trump gets into office, the next phase that, the security state will go through to try and prevent him from doing anything is try to create resistances. And, I don't know that they're doing a very successful job at that, but it's pretty obvious that they're doing that. And we're going to get into that a little bit more in another section.
How much did they spend in California on homelessness?
24 billion.
And then like nothing changed, right?
No, they got worse.
Oh,
They did a good job.
Awesome.
They did a good
So maybe
job.
we could spend 36 billion. You know, like, so there's also this idea that like the current administration in these places, even with an abundance of money, is not going to make change. So you need somebody from inside, from the left, to go, hey, these people are corrupt on my team. We're going to root out that corruption, but we are going to take care of homelessness. We are going to make eggs cheaper. We are going to build fucking 10,000 affordable housing units so that the price of, you know, your rent can go way down.
Okay, let's stop right there. What he just said, you need someone on the left to do that stuff. That was the squad. That was Bernie Sanders. That was the Justice Democrats. We tried that to no avail. We already tried that.
Yeah, we here now. Stupid.
So watching these dumb fucks rally around Bernie Sanders as if that's the answer now is so hilarious. And I'm not going to go pull it up, but I tweeted, yeah, let's hurry and join this movement that's going to corral us all into voting for John Fetterman in 2028, because that's exactly what's going to happen. And again, as far as, you know, Rogan goes, there's a lot of talk in the Twitter sphere, whatever the fuck you want to call it now, in political talk spaces that, you know, he's right wing and he's an asset. But here's Rogan advocating more progressive policy, and Andrew Schultz advocating more progressive policy than any Democrat I've heard recently. You know, they're just out there calling everyone a Russian and advocating that we keep sending billions of dollars to Ukraine for God knows why, because until they run out of people. I mean, that's just the most batshit. And the insanity in the press right now is so telling. And the Democratic Party, you know, they're literally out there fighting tooth and nail to keep a war going against diplomatic relations. It's mind-blowing. And I do want to say, I noticed something the other night about the influence of Joe Rogan. I was doing rideshare the other day, and I drove this carload of old ladies, and they were totally like the Karen types. I picked them up from a Bonnie Raitt concert, and they kept saying, "That's wild. Isn't it wild how, oh, that's so wild." And it just made me think, you know, Joe Rogan was the first person I heard use that term pretty frequently. And it's kind of cotton on to the, been, I guess, absorbed into the lexicon, so to speak, because I use it. I'm like, wow, that's wild. That's what, you know, but even old ladies are using it. I think I heard them say that last night and it clicked in my head. I'm like, that's such a cultural marker of the influence that Joe Rogan wields, because even if you don't know it, you're being influenced by him. I guarantee you those ladies do not like Joe Rogan. They probably think he's a Nazi, pro-Trumper who hates America and wants Putin to, you know, whatever the fucking bullshit they're saying on TV is right now. But to me, it's kind of a good sign that things are moving in a good direction, because people don't buy this nonsense. And with that, I would like to talk about Ian Carroll. Now, he did this podcast with Rogan. We're going to stay on the Rogan sphere here because he had a lot of good guests the last couple of weeks. But I'm not going to relitigate a Twitter back and forth between people on the left and everything. But I've noticed this, especially with Ian Carroll. Because he got onto Rogan and because he's kind of like had this kind of pretty quick rise to success via TikTok, there's a lot of talk on in leftist circles that he's a plant and he's an op and all this stuff. And I think a lot of it, to be honest, is jealousy. I really do. I think people are just jealous that he took off in a way that they didn't. And I think the reason that happened is because he puts out good content frequently, like Joe Rogan. He puts out stuff that's interesting and he breaks complex issues down to a way that's easy to understand, which is very effective. And so, you know, someone had said on Twitter, they pulled a clip of him, and in the clip, he said something about how Whitney Webb seems unhinged online. And that's exactly what he said. He's like, she seems kind of unhinged online, but her book is really good, blah, 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 blah. The context of this conversation was Ian Carroll was trying to get Joe Rogan to read Whitney Webb's book and possibly have her on the show. But I found all these people in leftist circles picking out these little out of context clips to smear Ian Carroll with. And it made me very, suspicious. Like, are you an op? Maybe you're the op. You know what I mean? You're the one creating this divisiveness by pulling up these false, these kind of like out of context things, which is what the mainstream press does. And the reason that people like Joe Rogan and Ian Carroll are so beloved is because they don't do that. If they're wrong, they admit they're wrong. If they don't play in falsehoods. They're honest. And so let's move to this next piece I want to talk about, which is we'll go into Ian Carroll after this. I'm actually going to skip around. I want to talk about Candace Owens and Theo Von, because Theo Von, again, is another one I've heard people go, oh, this guy's an op. This guy's an op because of his rise to fame. He puts out, he's a funny dude. When I first discovered Theo Von, and go watch this, I've probably said this before if you haven't seen it, but he did a thing, it's on YouTube, it's free, it's called This Is Not Happening, and he tells this story about a coke binge he went on with this cab driver in New York, and how that's when he quit drugs, and it's a fucking hilarious story. I've shown it to multiple people, and so it's one of those things where, like, yeah, Theo Von rose pretty fast, but he also, you don't see what he was there for a long time. I think he was on like Road Rules or something, like he's been hustling behind the scenes and doing all this stuff before he kind of blew up that you didn't see. He didn't just come out of nowhere, but I've really liked the kind of trajectory that he's been on, and I'm going to show you why. He recently had Candace Owens, who, if you listen to me talk much, you probably know I love. And she had some very interesting things to say that I think are good for a to hear. So again, say what you want about the Joe Rogans and Theo Vons of the world. They're having these types of conversations at the very least. And so here's Theo Von and Candace Owens, and just take a listen to this and we'll talk about it.
Gaza, right? To me, that's like,
I totally disagree with him on it, and it's like, it's hard to reconcile it in many ways. It's hard to reconcile because I see so much hypocrisy in terms of when we say America first.
I keep forgetting to do this. And actually, let me back this up a little bit. So you can kind of hear that.
What do you like? I'm kind of conflicted about Trump, like with his stance on Gaza, right? To me, that's like,
I totally disagree with him on it, and it's like, it's hard to reconcile it in many ways. It's hard to reconcile because I see so much hypocrisy in terms of when we say America first, for whatever reason, we have this magic carve out, and you cannot pretend that that's not because AIPAC spends $100 million in our election. And this gets back to what we were talking about, whether it's Big Pharma, whether it's Israel, everyone's for sale in DC. And so I have been very disappointed with Trump on his perspectives about Gaza. I have been disappointed, by the way, he's the last person I'm disappointed with, because I've been disappointed, as we saw all last year, with the conservatives, people that say they're Christians, who are condoning this on the basis of what? Like, you're saying, oh, well, they're Muslims, so who cares? And that gets into our programming, which I've spoken about in my podcast, of this 9/11 programming, where we just don't see Muslims as like human life. And to me, to speak about Gaza and talking about casinos and hotels, and these people just lost their entire families. It's so far removed from humanity. And I think it's wrong. And I'm tired of America being used as Israel's piggyback. For whatever reason, everyone can critique every other country for taking money from us. And then there's just, everyone's blind when it comes to Israel. And obviously I paid a very heavy price for saying that last year, but I don't care, because I am truly someone whose values have never been up for.
So I think Candace Owens recently won an award from like the ADL for being the most anti-Semite of the year or whatever. So you have to give Theo Von a lot of credit for platforming hate here with Candace Owens, because she's speaking some facts here that you're not going to see on Rachel Maddow, for example.
Like, I don't care. I will burn everything to the ground and rebuild it. I have to be able to like sleep at night, and to see those Palestinian children, and the images are seared into my brain. The screaming, the crying, the bleeding, the stuff that we saw on X for the first time, largely thanks to Elon freeing the bird, and really realizing how much we had been lied to about what was happening in that region, I just, it was very easy for me to say, take whatever you have to take from me. I have to be on like the human side of things.
I think it's become both sides of the aisle now just see that, human people just feel like this is that it's just wrong.
Of course.
What's happened is wrong. Like probably a year ago, people were afraid to even say that. And now it is what everybody is saying. Like even Piers Morgan is saying it on his show now. Like people are saying it's obvious that you can't go and annihilate and genocide this culture and make them disappear. And then Trump to come on top of it and say they're going to build, you're going to go on a lazy river where there's bodies of like, who could even go to that?
And what's so crazy is the, like,
okay. So again, I keep saying again, but Trump was on Theo Von's show. Like conservatives listen to Theo Von. He wields immense influence in MAGA circles. Joe Rogan, even bigger, and he gets into this too. But I don't like this tendency to just smear someone as an op or a secret spy, because it's one of those things that you can use again to discredit people with zero evidence. If you have some good evidence, if you have some links that are legitimate, I'll look at them. Maybe you're right. I'm not ruling out that some of these people aren't, but I'm also saying it's a little disingenuous to jump in and just be like, oh, that guy is on this show. Like he got big, so he's a fucking secret spy. Now, to be fair, there are plenty of people that fit that description. Lex Friedman, for example, like that guy is, Candace said it herself. He's so flat and boring. He puts me to sleep. He has no charisma whatsoever. Theo Von's actually funny. Theo Von has good conversations and sprinkles in humor and stuff like that. Joe Rogan has interesting people on his show and is genuinely curious. That's why they're big, not because they're secret ops for the CIA. And one of the reasons I think that kind of conversational point is starting to become prevalent is because they're having conversations like this one.
The mainstream media thinking that we're so stupid that they're going to condition us to believe that to not support the ethnic cleansing, they're then going to mine our like preconditioned beliefs about the Holocaust and be like, oh, well, a Jewish person died. So if you don't agree with what we're doing over here, then you're a person that wants more Jewish people to die. It's like, this is an evil way to try to socially engineer what you want, because actually it's precisely because of what I learned growing up about Holocaust and ethnic cleansings that I do not support what the state of Israel is doing. And you're trying to convince me that it means that if anybody's been wronged in the past, they can't wrong people in the future. You're also wrongly conflating like a Jewish American. Why? You have nothing to do with what's going on in Israel. This is a foreign country. No more than if right now we were standing up to a genocide that was happening in Ghana.
Yeah.
And then when I'm going to be like, oh, well, if you don't support what, the president of Ghana wants to do, then you want American slavery back. I'm like, it's like, what are you talking about? Just because I'm black and like,
such a fantastic fucking point. That is why I love Candace Owens. I mean, that is such a great point, that what she made about loyalty to country and all that, and the Uganda thing. Yeah, like just because I'm black doesn't mean I have to support, some African country that's massacring people. It's a foreign country. This is, again, my leftist friends. These are the kind of conversations that are happening in right-wing MAGA circles. And there's a tendency, I know, I get it, lefty skeptics and the people that want to call everyone a Nazi. There's a tendency to you should be skeptical. I'm not saying, oh, Trump's here, everything's great now, you should definitely be skeptical, but also you should not be stupid. And you should not fall prey to the same tactics that got used to convince you that Joe Biden was fit as a fiddle. It's funny to me how the same people who could see through the COVID BS, the, Joe Biden's fit and sane BS, the, whatever you need, like give, there's so many fake narratives in the press. They can see through that, but somehow all the stuff about Elon being a secret Nazi and, Trump wanting to destroy America with Putin, like that sits with them and with no evidence, and the Elon thing is so funny because I said it the other day. I said, yeah, most people would have no idea what was going on in the Middle East if Elon hadn't purchased Twitter, but he's a secret Nazi also. Yeah. He's working with Hitler. you know, and the first response I got from that was some guy like, secret with a question mark. He didn't salute on TV. That means he murdered 1 million Jews. Like, it's such a stupid connection to make. And I know that that's why Elon, just this morning, I should have clipped this. I can send it to myself, but Kanye posted, Kanye really wants attention, and him and Candace are connected, so I'll take this sidebar. But Kanye posted a picture of a KKK cloak and hood this morning. He goes, just picked out my new outfit for today. Clearly, he is trolling. You know what I mean? Like, he is he's trying to get attention. He wants attention. He's like, yo, KKK. Anyway, let me let Candace finish here because she's nailing it.
Maybe my family is from Ghana. Why on earth would I not be able to critique a foreign country for something that they're doing that is so objectively wrong?
Yeah.
And so it's disappointed me as someone who just had so much respect and belief in the conservative movement and believing that it was a principled movement, and Christians as well. I've been very disappointed in Christians who are trying to use this like biblical argument for just, well, no matter what, you know.
Are people doing that?
Yeah, it's pretty sick, man. It is very sick. They're basically saying that the Bible's, the Bible will bless those who bless Israel. And I'm like, okay, so we have a country who first and foremost doesn't have to give us back our pedophiles. Literally, they have this weird rule that you can go if you're Jewish and hide as a pedophile. And actually an amazing Jewish organization did the work there. You could pull it up. I think it was on CBS.
Okay, I'm going to stop. You can go research that if you want. But again, there is MAGA. There's the debate among MAGA. Yes, it's very clear that the Trump administration has deep ties to the industry / country that she's talking about. But there's a second part of this I want you to see where they talk a little bit more about this, and they talk about a certain guy who didn't kill himself here, and kind of how that connection, how that connects to one of our projects in the Middle East. Check it out.
Powerful blackmail operations are definitely operating, and that's
actual blackmail.
Yeah, it's true blackmail. I mean, if you have hidden cameras and you're capturing people doing drugs and sleeping with underage people, so I think these are blackmail operations, and I think they've been going on for decades in America. I think it was Jeffrey Sachs who spoke really well about that, the history of that on Tucker Carlson's show, and he's Jewish, and that's what I hate about it. It's trying to make Jewish Americans think that they have to defend the country is so ridiculous. I am not required to. If my family goes back to you.
So she just mentioned Tucker Carlson, also someone who's deeply critical of our special relationship, and also someone who is a prominent voice in the world of MAGA. Also someone who's been seen going in and out of the White House. Trump used to famously watch his show during his first term. Tucker Carlson is one of those guys. If you know wrestling terminology, heel turn, he did a babyface turn. Tucker Carlson turned from a heel to a babyface. And, I think the Democrats, a lot of them did the exact opposite of that. But let's keep going.
Uganda. I'm not required to defend Uganda as a state. I'm sorry. I'm an American. And I think what you're doing is wrong. If it doesn't really matter, And you're right to say that it's sort of this circumstance where everybody knows something is going on and they think they're just going to keep gaslighting us. It's so weird. Like they're just going to go, nothing's going on. Nothing. There's just everybody woke up one day and decided to be Hitler. Like that's what the media is basically accusing us of, for like noticing a lot of dead people, like a lot of dead women and children. And that's failing.
That was an alt title for this episode of the stream. Everybody is Hitler. But I went with, everybody's a deep state psyop instead.
By the way, I think that is the reason I don't regret them doing that, because it's the reason why podcasts like the mainstream media, this like effort to just keep smearing, libeling people for noticing basic human things. And I don't regret it because I think it's the reason that trust with them has been fractured. I'm grateful that people no longer believe them. I'm grateful that now people are going to independent podcasts. And when we go on to Spotify, you see like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. That means that for holding on to just like basic human values and being willing to talk about issues in a way and not pretend that your audiences are stupid and not seeing what you're we've earned their trust, and I don't want to fumble that ball. Like I want to always say, even if I don't know something, and sometimes I can't speak on it, that I don't know everything, but I'm willing to find out before I speak on it, or at least have the conversation and not treat you like you're an idiot and I'm like the authority.
Yeah, I just can't learn at a fast rate. That's one of my biggest issues, I think. Speaking about Epstein, right? How do you
So
how
just
do
to
you know
pause
he's
there,
not
I
just a
think
Jewish
the
guy
point
who
that
is
Candace just made about why people have kind of abandoned the mainstream media is so goddamn relevant. And I think this election, because I didn't vote, I've said that many times, but I was kind of interested to see what the outcome of this election would be because of that. And I think, you know, the fact that the Democrats lost this election just totally backs up the point that Candace just made. So there it is. I mean, these are the kind of conversations that are happening in the MAGA world. And again, Barron Trump watches Theo Von. Tucker Carlson has access to, you know, the White House. So it's encouraging. Let's say that. You know, I'm not the kind of person who's dumb enough to say, oh yeah, like everything's going to be great now because Trump's in control. No, you should always be skeptical. You should always push back. You should always call out bullshit when you see it. But you should also not be, whipped up in hysteria, in the same kind of hysteria that happened over January 6th, or the same kind of hysteria that happened over a certain virus that was going around. It's very easy, and I feel bad for people who are still able to be whipped into this hysteria just because of the government changed, you know? But let's keep going. So let's get into the Ian Carroll, Joe Rogan conversation. I want to just highlight a couple of points in that conversation because it was long, and I don't think a lot of people watched all of it. I think a lot of people just saw the clips or the out of context clips and went, see, he's an op, Ian's an op. But they talked about a lot of, again, they talked about a lot of stuff that the mainstream press and the kind of organizations that run Washington don't want people talking about. So they can't just go, the whole he's an anti-Semite thing. It's hard to make that claim. It's getting, that wolf has been cried so many times. It's getting way more difficult to, respectfully make a claim like that. So there's a couple things I want to highlight here. The first thing is, and this will probably be the longest part about it, because I saw a lot of people, going, oh, I didn't see him talk about Israel at all in this conversation. Show me where, and they did actually. But I want to start with this whole section of the conversation about socialism, because Ian Carroll here is almost kind of like making a pro-socialism argument to Rogan and explaining to Rogan's audience what happens, and how the government uses fear of socialism to manipulate people into supporting these foreign wars. And here, let's just listen.
Director of CIA, but he was like the founder. He just had a beef with Truman and with the first couple leaderships of the president there.
So he's talking about
United Fruit
Dulles.
goes to them and is like, hey, can we overthrow this piece of shit? Because he's fucking with our business, right? So this is like how corporations wanted this government sanctioned power. And they, through those two brothers, lobbied the United States, propagandized the United States.
So I should probably back up just a little bit. Hold on. Let me back it up just a little bit here.
Right. So United Fruit goes to Alan Dulles. His brother, John Foster Dulles, was the corporations, theoretically to work on behalf of the U.S. But when you read the histories and you read what Alan Dulles was saying behind closed doors and everything, what he was doing is he was hiring the U.S. government in order to fund a corporate slush fund for corporations to utilize this power, this newly government bestowed power, to essentially wage violence that is sanctioned. Because, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Because all those corporations, the perfect example is Guatemala. United Fruit Company had bought up all this land in Guatemala and was growing bananas like crazy. And a lot of the land was just sitting vacant. And Jacobo Arbenz comes into power and he's like, this is bullshit. There's this American corporation that's owning all of our land, that's making all of us poor, and they're not even using a bunch of this land. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy back the land. He didn't take it. He bought it back from the United Fruit Company, and he was going to distribute it for free to all the...
Let me pause there. What he's talking about, too, is why there's a migrant crisis. We go into these countries and fuck them up. But sorry.
Farmers that were destitute, which is like socialist, kind of, but it's also pretty badass to use like your government money to buy all your farmers' land from this multinational corporation. But that pissed United Fruit off. And this is right as the CIA was getting founded. And United Fruit was a client of Sullivan and Cromwell, and Alan Dulles was a lawyer there, right? So United Fruit goes to Alan Dulles. His brother John Foster Dulles was the Secretary of State. Yeah, Secretary of State. So these two brothers that are both lawyers for Sullivan and Cromwell are the director. Well, technically Alan Dulles was not yet the director of CIA, but he was like the founder. He just had beef with Truman and with the first couple leaderships of the president there. And so United Fruit goes to them and is like, hey, can we overthrow this piece of shit? Because he's fucking with our business, right? So this is like how corporations wanted this government-sanctioned power. And they, through those two brothers, lobbied the United States, propagandized the United States. They hired propaganda artists to propagandize them. And they painted him as a communist right at our doorstep. And then the CIA went in and through a series of kind of somewhat botched attempts called PB Success.
Painted him as a communist. Just like the left has a problem with calling everyone a Nazi or a fascist, the right has a problem with calling everyone a communist because they're propagandized to do that. Just like you lefties are propagandized to call everyone a Nazi or a right winger or a far right extremist in the same manner to quell debate.
And PB, or rather Operation Success and Operation PB Success. They overthrew the government of Guatemala and they ousted him. They bombed Guatemala City and they got rid of him and they put in their own dictator that started 30 years of absolute devastation and like military rule and just death, like really dark shit that basically tore Guatemala apart on behalf of United Fruit. They did the same thing in Iran like 3 years later with Kermit Roosevelt, where it became this thing where these multinational corporations that are affiliated with this intelligence agency, just kind of through friendships and through partnerships and through the network, they started to utilize Alan Dulles and the CIA in general on their behalf to do things for the corporate interest because they are the power players in this world. They always have been the power players in this world. And they had been itching for quite some time to get that government sanctioned ability to wage violence against anyone around the world. And we've been doing that ever since, using the intelligence agencies on behalf of the corporate blob, which is not always distinguishable from organized crime, and just going off and whacking people and overthrowing governments and starting coups like right to this day, to like Ukraine 2014.
And they can do it without being directly connected.
Exactly. So yeah, the concept
Just like
of
the USA
plausible
thing.
deniability. That's the whole point.
Yes.
Is you want to set it up in a series of shells, and the darker it is, the more you have to kind of separate it, so that when Jeffrey Epstein goes down, no one knows who he worked for.
Right.
He worked for intelligence, and I was told to leave him alone.
Right.
And so you're left to speculate who he worked for, and that's why we are left to rely on sources like Whitney Webb, who's done sort of the definitive dig, because they won't fucking tell us because a bunch of them are blackmailed. Whoa. Yeah.
So there he is advocating again for Whitney Webb and her book. I really hope my hope from this conversation and kind of the like manufactured outrage of lefty circles is that Whitney Webb gets on Joe Rogan. And knowing Joe Rogan, he's the kind of guy who responds to his audience. I've seen a lot of people, including Ian Carroll, say that he should have Whitney Webb on. So one more thing I want to show you from this conversation. Well, maybe two more. But this is, again, a lot of people in leftist circles claim there was not a conversation about this. And I just want to show you where they did actually talk about our favorite friends, our special relationship, so to speak. And there's a lot of good stuff here. So let me put this on.
He also just hooked people up with wives. Like, do you know that he claimed that he introduced Melania to Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy one. I suspect, Melania conspiracy time. I suspect that Melania has been whispering in Trump's ear. I think she was trafficked before, either bad trafficked or good, or just like knew Epstein and like knew that world a little bit. But I suspect that she's been whispering in his ear about what that really is and does and all that things. Because she's been kind of like acting from the back a lot. But when you really dig into what Melania's been doing, she's very active in anti-trafficking and in protecting trafficked victims and girls and stuff. And as Trump, when he married her, and then they have Barron, and he's watching his son grow up. So you have this young child, and you have this wife telling you about her previous life, probably, and just whispering in your ear that like this could be your legacy, this could be your legacy, this could be your legacy, right? Because he used to be friends with those people, even though I don't think he was blackmailed, because I think that would have come out when the Democrats were going for him.
Right.
And maybe he was involved in the trafficking a little bit because of the things that he bought and the people that he knew and like Roy Cohn connections. But I don't even know about that. But regardless, he knows the game. And then he marries Melania. And then more and more, like he was in charge when Epstein went down. He was the only one that when Epstein got arrested and they were going around asking for dirt, he was like, I'll fully fucking cooperate. Fuck that guy. I'll tell you everything that I know. And so I suspect that Melania has been instrumental in his sort of shift to being the only guy willing to go after those traffickers.
Out of all,
that's an interesting theory that I never actually thought of. But it is possible. I mean, you don't really hear her talk much. So, and that, you know, Trump obviously has ties to Epstein. There's photos of them together. and Epstein claims so that's an interesting theory. I guess we'll see what happens, but
the information that's getting disclosed, supposedly this administration, what do you have the least faith that we're
Listen
going
to
to
this.
come to
Epstein,
a
for
conclusion?
sure.
Epstein.
And I think it's because of Israel. I think
Really?
that because I mean,
There you go.
when you really dig into Epstein, his entire network was Israel. It was clearly like Ehud Barak was the ex-prime minister and the ex-head of Israeli intelligence.
This guy is a secret Mossad agent, people. Secret Mossad agent, secret state agent.
Leslie Wexner was one of the most powerful pro-Israeli philanthropists. The whole organization was Israel.
So
and
it
I'm
was
not
all-
saying it was all of Israel.
It was
I'm not-
all an intelligence gathering, and
it was targeting Americans. It was targeting American officials and the American president.
Right.
And the CIA does have interest in those targets too. Elements in the CIA does. Certainly they had help from the CIA, and certainly they had help from these other organized crime and intelligence operations. But you don't so for example, Dan Bongino, the new was he deputy director of the FBI? He recently had this clip that went all around where he said on camera that he had a source that he trusted deeply, and he's an informed guy. He was at Fox News interview, and the source told him that Epstein was working for an intelligence agency in the Middle East, and I don't know which one, but someone in the Middle East. And to be fair, we all already knew this. We already know who he worked for. At least I think so. But I'm looking at, okay, Dan. So if this giant group of Jewish billionaires is running a sex trafficking operation targeting American politicians and business people and stuff, you think they're working with an Arab or Muslim nation in the Middle East? Like, you think that Leslie Wexner is devoting his entire life to philanthropies on behalf of Israel, but then he's going to work for Saudi Arabia when he's doing this trafficking ring?
Right. But if someone says to him that they're all working for a country in the Middle East, knowing he knows what that means, but not specifying, doesn't he kind of have to repeat it that same way?
Well, he also has to repeat it the same way because he won't get the job if he says Israel, because
Exactly.
Israel has
Right.
so much control over our government right now. And I'm not saying that all Jews are in on something. Clearly, internet. Thank
Clearly,
you.
internet.
And Joe is definitely not saying that.
Definitely not.
But the Israel's government is every bit as vulnerable to the deep state effect as our.
Remember what Candace Owens said? I think that's so relevant. It's a foreign country. Just because you're Jewish doesn't mean you can't criticize a foreign country. Just because she's African doesn't mean she can't criticize Africa. It's just ridiculous how stupid people have been made by this issue and allowed themselves to be
the American government. But I would argue that Israel's government is way more vulnerable to it because of the people that founded Israel and the way it was founded. It was founded in a modern time, much more recently, by it was a revolutionary founding. And I can totally sympathize with the Jewish desire to have that state. I get it. But because of the way that happened, the people that founded Israel were a bunch of organized crime figures in America, the Jewish mob, that were helping with money and with arms trafficking to get the guns there because they had to have guns. And it was the Rothschild banking family sending a whole bunch of money and getting the declaration in the first place. And then the people that were there, the three different organizations, the Irgun, the Lehi group, and the Haganah, those were the three paramilitary groups that fought to found Israel, and they're the heroes of Israel, which I understand the narrative that they're heroes. But when Israel was officially founded, they officially designated Irgun and Lehi as terrorist organizations because they had been bombing civilians. They'd been bombing British civilians. The first official act of terror before they changed the definition was the bombing of the King David Hotel, where these terrorists, these Lehi and Irgun terrorists, a bunch of different groups, the guy who planned that bombing later became the prime minister of Israel. They were bombing civilians. So when those are the groups that are fighting to found that nation, even if all the Jews there are wonderful people, the leadership is inherently composed of these people that have been deeply corrupt for all time. And so you get this fertile ground for this kind of deep state effect to take power. And when you start to research the heads of state of Israel over history, you realize that a bunch of them were in those groups doing those terrorist acts and have done a bunch of dark stuff because those were the people that were at the top of that military organization. Those terrorist organizations reformed to form the IDF.
And what's interesting is you can talk.
There you go. And that, my friends, is why Ian Carroll is a secret deep state operative. He is speaking things in a very public forum that people do not want to be spoken. And I just hope that my friends on the left will be more critical of the narratives that are occurring out there. And, just think critically is all I ask. Don't allow yourself to be swept up in the same dipshittery that the, brunch liberals are. The people who think we're fighting for freedom in Ukraine as we send weapons to neo-Nazi groups like the Azov battalion. It makes a lot of sense, right? So I had a bunch of stuff I wanted to cover, but I don't want to be too long-winded. So I think the next thing, let me show you one more clip from this Ian Carroll conversation, because this is another good one, I think. And it kind of hammers down the point that I'm making about, the narrative shapers and all that kind of stuff. So this is them talking about flat earthers, and I thought this was really interesting because it's again another great example of how
the bandwidth
information can be used as a
all in,
weapon.
but be very skeptical, because that's where you get wild conspiracy theories that are unproven, and trust me. And then you also get all kinds of propaganda trying to obfuscate the narrative. And,
Yeah, that's a
right?
big factor that people need to be aware of, is purposeful misinformation
Oh,
that
yeah.
gets inserted into a narrative to make that narrative ridiculous.
Yep.
They've
And
done
there's
that.
whole conspiracy theories that I
Yeah.
think are like that. And Q might be one of them. I don't know.
could
I think
be.
flat Earth is one of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think flat Earth was someone did that as a goof, and then they couldn't believe how much it took.
Yeah, right.
But
I
if
mean-
you can speak well and you're articulate and you have compelling things that you're saying, and there's no counter, there's no scientist going stop.
Yeah.
We can show you in fucking 10 minutes that the Earth is round. Everything in the sky is round. The Earth
Yep.
is the only thing that's not round. You know, the weirdness of it is how much people want to believe that everything's bullshit.
Yeah.
And so you could trick a
I
certain
mean, I
number
get
of people.
why. Like, think
Oh, yeah.
about
And that technique is being used with great effect among lefty circles. And after this was Ian Carroll after this interview.
Don't tase me, bro. Don't tase me. I didn't do anything. Ow! 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 Ow!
I just love how he starts really selling it at the end. All right. So last bit of information I want to share with you today is from our boys at the Gray Zone. And they had a lot of great stuff, but this kind of last piece is the point that I want to hammer home, because this is Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate. Well, really just Max, because I think Aaron cut out early. But what they're talking about here is what's currently going on behind the scenes with our special relationship. And this is a widely missed, I think, bit of news that you're going to be pretty happy to hear. And as always, the Gray Zone, just probably between them and Glenn Greenwald, maybe Lee Fong and Matt Taibbi, some of the best, probably the best journalism out there. I would argue Gray Zone is probably at the top of the heap for all those people, but I love Matt Taibbi and Greenwald as well. But this is basically Max kind of talking about the current negotiation situation in the Middle East, and again, what's going on behind the scenes. And I think this is something that when I heard it, it gave me a little bit of like a glimmer of hope that something might change. Because like I said at the beginning of this, you can hear, the way that someone like Candace Owens or Joe Rogan is talking, that this sentiment that has been very powerful on the left in politics for the last couple of years, this anti-war sentiment or anti-genocide sentiment, so to speak, is also very prominent on the right, the quote unquote right, and Candace Owens is on the right. She's a Christian conservative. I definitely don't agree with her views on porn and free speech and that, but she's nailing it on a lot of other stuff. And listen to what Max has to say. So I think just to kind of summarize this too, I wanted to show you what the talk is around this issue in, right-wing circles. But here's, what the actual policy on the ground looks like right now, or, the machinations, I guess, of policy on this issue. And Max goes into some reporting again that is, I don't think, been widely looked at yet. So let me make sure we're on the right speed here. Yeah, we're good. All right.
And Benjamin Netanyahu.
Okay, let me go back just a little bit.
Any other country or any other group. But what's taking place right now could have triggered a responsibility to protect operation by the West.
Okay, let me forgive my clunkiness here.
Which I don't know, it could potentially lead, it could generate enough tension to potentially lead to a change in direction on Trump's Gaza policy. This all started with a report in Axios, which was obviously leaked by the Israelis, that Donald Trump his team was directly negotiating with Hamas through their negotiator in Doha, Khalil al-Hayya, And this is a report by the Times of Israel. Trump defends direct U.S.-Hamas talks as Israel seethes, attempts to attempts to sabotage them. U.S. president says effort is aimed at releasing Israeli hostages.
So that is a very interesting headline, is it not? From the Times of Israel. Read that headline. Soak that in. Soak it in. And listen to what Max has to say.
But Witkoff admits U.S. captives are a priority and that Trump issued ultimatum after Hamas didn't play ball in meetings. So we heard Donald Trump explode and say all hell is going to break loose if Hamas doesn't do what he wants. That was the result of direct negotiations between Trump's negotiators, someone whose name is...
Quick stop right there. The stuff that Trump is saying on TV about, like, if you don't get the hostages to us right now, we're going to blow you up or whatever. From where I'm sitting, based on the headline of this article Max just showed you, that is him kind of like publicly continuing to pander to those people, the people that, you know, gave him all the money that they gave him, while he's actually doing this kind of thing behind the scenes. But, you know.
Adam Bowler, who worked for an Israeli tech company, incidentally, out of college. Don't know much about him, but he's Trump's hostage negotiator. New developments. I speculated that Israel was spying on the Trump administration and its diplomatic track. And now we're seeing openly Netanyahu try to push Donald Trump around. Top Netanyahu confidant lashed out at U.S. envoy over direct talks with Hamas. Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer lashed out at U.S. hostage envoy Adam Bowler.
So to use a term here, it's pretty wild that it's a Republican administration doing this, going over, like, just directly negotiating with Hamas directly. This is why Trump is, more than anything, you know, there's someone in the comments like, this is a pro-Trump channel. No, this is a pro-reality channel. And the reason that Trump is so hated is because of stuff like this, because he's going around the status quo, and you're not supposed to do that. It's a special relationship, you guys.
The guy who's directly talking to Khalil Al-Hayya in Doha about the dual citizens, American Israelis, who were taken captive on October 7th. During a phone call held Tuesday, a Western official tells the Times of Israel, Western official probably being a Trump official, possibly Adam Bowler. After Israel learned of an unprecedented meeting in Doha that the Trump aide held with the senior Hamas delegation led by Khalil Al-Hayya to discuss the potential release of American hostages from...
I like that word, unprecedented. That's what we want to hear. I don't care which party does it. I want to break the status quo down. And the kind of people that defend the status quo are the kind of people that are outing themselves as terrible people.
Gaza. First of all, who is Ron Dermer? Ron Dermer is from Miami Beach. I think his father was the mayor of Miami Beach. Pretty sure he's still an American citizen, speaks with an American accent. He's been very close to Netanyahu since Netanyahu re-entered power in 2009. He's sort of like his American fixer. In many ways, he's one of his top advisors. And he is bullying and threatening an American administration as an Israeli, even though he's from the US. I mean, this says so much about what's wrong with Zionism and how Zionism has poisoned American politics, because you have a guy who's from America, born in the US, whose family is prominent in American politics, who wouldn't have been able to bully an American president as an American, who just goes and uses his privilege as an American Jew to get Israeli citizenship, and then as the advisor to a prime minister who got a minority of the vote of a country with a population of about 6 million people, can go thug it out against the leader of a country of 350 million people, a global superpower. This is just insane on its face. And how should Trump react to that? Does Trump like being pushed around? Does he like Netanyahu for doing this? This is creating unprecedented tension within the Trump administration, because the Israelis are trying to subvert a Trump initiative. Here's Ali Abunimah. I agree that, quote unquote, Israel likely leaked the news of the Hamas-US talks to embarrass Donald Trump and derail them. That prompted the latest belligerent anti-Palestinian statements from Trump and Witkoff. Perhaps Israel's meddling will work. perhaps it will just antagonize Trump. I think it will probably, the meddling will work, just given the pattern of Israeli meddling and how it has consistently moved Trump into line with Netanyahu's position and sometimes even beyond it, just to overcompensate. But this is certainly and privately antagonized Trump. But there's just one other point I want to make about this, which is what it says about the perspective of Donald Trump and his administration, which is effectively under the control, has been under the control of the Israel lobby as much or more than any other previous US administration. They know that Netanyahu is not serious about negotiating for the release of the remaining hostages. They clearly have acknowledged or tacitly acknowledged that Benjamin Netanyahu does not want to get to the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire negotiations because it will mean a full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu doesn't want that. It would mean moving towards a permanent ceasefire. Netanyahu doesn't want that. There was an Israeli drone strike in Shujaiya, east of Gaza City, just today. Netanyahu wants to continue to attack Gaza and maintain a military presence in southern Lebanon as well. How is this a tacit acknowledgement by Trump that Netanyahu is not serious about getting the captives out of Gaza? Because there are two there who are dual US-Israeli citizens, and there's no way that Donald Trump would have broken the standard protocol of letting Israel lead these negotiations unless he knew that those Americans would have languished there forever because Netanyahu wouldn't get them out. And so it's created unprecedented tension between Tel Aviv and Washington. And it's now playing out openly because figures like Ron Dermer of Miami Beach, who serves Israel, are going to the media and are weaponizing the media against Donald Trump to try to meddle in US politics and bully Donald Trump into line with Netanyahu's obstructionist, rejectionist position on the ceasefire.
And there you go. So that is where we sit right now. And my beef with people on the left for a long time has just been, what have you actually accomplished outside of just arguing with each other and calling each other ops or anti-trans turfs or whatever? Nothing. And so a lot of the people like me who kind of sat out the last election are glad that it panned out the way that it did, because there was no chance of any of this happening under a continued Biden-Harris thing. No chance whatsoever. And despite Trump's, brashness and his stuff that he took money from these lobbies. Like, if you look at the AIPAC stats, probably more than anyone in the race, but he doesn't need that money either. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Like Max said, this administration has as much, if not more, influence from this lobby than any previous administration. But this type of stuff, like just the receipts right there, that they're willing to directly negotiate with Hamas versus, taking Israel's orders and sitting down like a good little Biden or a good little Harris or a good little Democrat would. I think that's kind of the grain of hope that I've always had for how this would play out is Netanyahu and Trump's conceited and arrogant and I guess self-aggrandizing enough that he's not going to allow someone like this to push him around. And that was kind of like that grain of hope that I had is like, the Democrats, they're not going to do anything. All they do is market. They don't ever do it. They're a consulting party. They're an advertising agency. You've seen it with the way that they responded to everything. They're doing dances and shit now. And I saw Jasmine Crockett did this thing where she like did a Kendrick Lamar dance, and it's so unserious. It's all pandering and empty rhetoric, kunta or kinte cloths or whatever. I almost said kunta kinte cloths, kente cloths. Like they knelt with now they held up little signs and dressed in pink. I think it was Max and Aaron who pointed out how it's ironic that all these Democratic women are wearing pink, looking like code pink as they're advocating keeping a war going. That's the state of the Democratic Party. Cheer for that. And then now you have these fake Bernie Sanders rallies, which makes me wonder if they're not just having people bust in. None of the Bernie people that I ran with are going to those rallies. So it's very interesting to just watch them continue to try and market instead of actually doing anything or speaking to the people who used to vote for them, like me. They lost us. You know, I don't think that I'm will ever vote Democrat again. I didn't vote Republican this cycle either. But, you know, if they do a good job and they end some of these wars, I might next cycle. You never know. So before we log off, let's go to the comments. I saw a lot of comment spamming. A lot of really. Oh, it's one person trying to get me banned. Jesus Christ. This is how I know I'm doing a good job. Because I get like these comment spammers in the mix. This channel promised us Trump was against war. I mean, I just showed you receipts that he's working to end the Gaza thing in a way that the Democrats never did. So, I mean, what do you want? Like, do you think Kamala Harris would have done anything? Hell yeah. Thank you. This is all one person. So this is the part where I get a little stupid. This is just stupid. Report this channel for supporting Trump. I mean, this is a good example of, you know, how dumb the Democratic Party has become. It's just like, oh, anyone who speaks any kind of nuance is a right-winger, anti-democratic. Anyway, I think I pretty accurately summed up my points today about just think critically, guys. Don't take out of context shit and try to paint someone as something for points. Like Candace said, the reason that she has an audience is because people know that she's just trying to tell the truth, and she's willing to admit when she's wrong, or she's willing to admit when, you know, something that she thought was a certain way is not. And I respect that a lot more than people who just call names or jump into them or take out of context posts and try to frame everyone as an op. There's a lot of jealousy in that regard. It just makes you look jealous, you know, when you have, unless you have receipts or like a valid point to make. If you're really bringing some receipts to the table, then, you know, then I'll listen to you. But otherwise, stop it. Just let's look at reality through the lens of reality and what's actually going on. It's a crazy time. Thank you for tuning in. With that, I'm going to sign off for the day. Like and subscribe, all that good shit. And, you know, I'm going to continue doing this and continue growing. And I appreciate y'all. Catch me on Twitter. Catch me outside. And I think we're going to close out today with one of my favorite music pieces. Let's see what I got for you today. It's always a bit of a wild card when I go into this route here, but we got these clips. Let's see. What am I going to bless you guys with on the way out tonight? Should I do the Smith modernization song? Maybe we won't do music. Maybe today we'll do... Okay, we're going to do Marjorie Taylor and AOC, Fund the Police, and I'm going to take you out with that. Thanks again. Let me know how you feel, even if you're like this sushi girl who's a total like Democratic robot. I love y'all, and take good care of yourselves out there. We'll see you soon.
Do you swear to tell the truth, Marjorie? Oh yeah, AOC, I'm going in. Fund the police, even though they won't come around. If your neighborhood's predominantly brown, and if you call them, they'll most likely show up and uncategorically shoot at minorities. Despite that shit, we gotta fund. Give corrupt mother lovers more badges and guns. Our police state is too big to fail, so let's fund the prison complex till we all live in jails. Tweeting at me cause I'm in Congress, dropping cash on the military complex, searching my timeline for racism. Cops know that I got mad funding to give them. AOC, and you wanna date me, cause I'm fresh, yo, put you in the friend zone. Criticize me, I will scream violence, then send the cops to your house just to silence you and your family's right to speak. Then I'll give $1 billion to the Capitol Police. I'm in the house, yo, we got the purse strings to fund the police state and do all the worst things. But I'll never do anything out there like vote against war or for universal health care. Fund the police. Fund the police. Yeah, girl. Fund the police. Fund the police. Yeah, fund the police. Fun the police.